Now, we're going to learn how to do something which is known as finding the greatest common factor. If you remember, a factor is something we can break a term down into that if you multiply it all together, it equals the term. So the factors of 4x squared are 2 times x times x. If you multiply that all together, that gives you 4x squared. And that is what a factor is. So what we're trying to do when we find the greatest common factor is find something that is a factor of every single term. So how we do that is we take each variable and each number in all of the terms and we find the lowest amount of that, because anything bigger than the lowest amount we cannot factor out. So let's start with our numbers. We have a 4. What's our lowest number? 482. Anything lower than 2? No. So we can start writing our greatest common factor is 2. That's for the real numbers. Now we can move on to variables. So x squared, is there anything lower than x squared? We have x. And then here we have no x. So what that means is we cannot have x in our greatest common factor. So our greatest common factor for this example is 2. In this example, we're trying to find the greatest common factor of 5x squared y minus 15x squared y squared and 15x cubed minus 45xy to the power of 5. So we're just trying to find the least of the real numbers and then the least of each variable for all the terms. So let's start with real numbers. What is the least real number we have that we can factor out? And we have a 5. Anything lower than a 5? Nope. So we can start writing our greatest common factor is 5. Let's move on to our x's. So the lowest exponent of x, we have x to the power of 2, another 2, 3, and then 1. So we have to take our lowest. So x is in our greatest common factor. Now let's look at our y. Our lowest so far is 1, 2, and here we have nothing. So we cannot put y in our greatest common factor because it's not in this term. So our greatest common factor for this example is 5x. Here's another example. Let's see if we can find the greatest common factor. So let's start with our real numbers. It looks like the lowest one we have is a 1. And then for our variables, let's do our x. Lowest value or lowest exponent of x is 0. So we cannot include x in our greatest common factor. And if you look at our y's, the lowest variable or the lowest exponent we have is 0. So we cannot include our y's in the greatest common factor. So z, the lowest, is also 0. So our greatest common factor for this example is 1. Here we have another example. Let's start with our real numbers to find our greatest common factor. So the lowest real number, it looks like 3. And is 3 a factor of 42? Yes, because 3 times 14 is equal to 42. If you need to figure out if 3 is a factor in 42, you can just type it into your calculator, divide it, and see if it comes out a whole number. And that's how I would do it. But we have, for our greatest common factor, we have 3 so far. For our variables, we have an a squared. Do we have anything lower? A squared is the lowest. And then for our b, we have b squared, b to the power of 3. Our lowest is b squared. And for our c, our lowest is 0. so we cannot include it, but this is our greatest common factor for this expression, or for these expressions.
Hey guys, if this video has been helpful to you, click the link in the description to get access to the complete Easy STEM Algebra 1 system, which includes a textbook, homework, and all of the course videos in order.